Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tax Goddess Live with the redheaded tax goddess herself, Shauna. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here with you guys today. Our podcast exists to educate, to entertain, to inspire business owners, entrepreneurs, and all the other crazy, fantastic, passionate, self-employed people out there. So today is March 19th, 2018, and I'm super excited to be here with our guest today. If you can't tell, I'm wiggling with excitement. So super excited to be here with our guest today. So Trey, are you ready to do this?
Let's do this.
Rock on. Yay. All right. So Trey is an expert in the finance world, all right? He is what would be considered and called a financial advisor. Trey, do I even want to know? Tell me all about all of the different initials after your name.
Well, the one that really matters is I like to use the CFP accreditation, which is a certified financial planner. The rest of them that you can just add up through regular continuing education. But what's vital and key to our industry is really that CFP designation.
And there we go. Okay, so CFP. So if you're working with somebody who's not a CFP, we'll get into that conversation. But Trey here is awesome. He is our expert. He's a CFP, so I'm super excited to have you here with us today. Trey, thank you so much for joining us. So thank you. So what is the one most important thing that our audience is going to get out of today's broadcast?
Is really focusing on understanding that finances is not as intimidating as it needs to be. And if you connect yourself with the right people that can guide you through the process, that's what's vital. That's what's most important. And whether you're just a beginner trying to uncover the ropes, starting your career and want to know about finances, or you're in the latter part of your career and you're reaching retirement, or you're in retirement and have a lot of questions that are unanswered, it's never too late to seek a professional.
I love it. Okay, so guests, we have a professional with us today. I'm super excited. So today we're going to be talking about the finance world, and I'm so thrilled to have Trey here with us because, as I mentioned, he is an expert. And we're going to be covering, now first, we always dive into some of this fun personal stuff. I have some little tips and tricks here about Trey, so I'm super excited to get to that. But before we jump into all the personal stuff, so Trey, give us a few statistics that are going to blow the mind of our listeners today. What are some things that people just don't know about the finance industry?
Well, a number that comes to mind off the top of my head is the transition of wealth. So as the baby boomers are reaching the older ages, that there's actually going to be $30 trillion in transfer of assets from baby boomers to beneficiaries. And it could be organizations, it could be children, it could be grandchildren, just depending on that situation. So you may be personally in a situation where you don't need to seek financial guidance, but that windfall may come sooner than expected. And with $30 trillion in assets transferring over the next 30 years,
okay, so Trey, that's awesome. Thank you so much. So any other statistics, any other rules of thumb, anything else that our audience absolutely needs to know today?
Yeah, one of the things you might hear is called the rule of 72. And it's just a quick way to really evaluate how quickly your assets can grow. So the thought process behind the rule of 72 is that you're using that factor to determine how much money or how much rate of return you want your money to grow in order for it to double. So what that means, give you an example. If you want $100 to double in 10 years, you're going to need a 7.2% rate of return. 10 years times 7.2 gives you that 72.
Okay.
So if you want your $100 to double in 5 years, you take 72 divided by 5, which is going to give you the 14.4% rate of return that you need year over year to have that $5 turn, or that $100 turn into $200. So it's just a quick, easy way to provide a benchmark. I hear a lot of people say, I want to get to this number. Okay, well, this is a quick way and how to evaluate how to get to that number, and is that reasonable? So that's a neat rule of thumb that's associated with finances, and then we discuss all the time. You brought up statistics. I did want to bring up one component because we're talking about a rate of return, is that recent volatility, the markets are up and down just in the last couple of months, like significant swings. And the thought process behind that is 13 of the top 18 market returns occur within the first couple weeks after a major sell-off. So if the concern is if you want to sell to cash when the market's selling off, you're going to miss some of the biggest positive returns in the market by going to cash. So it was 13 to 18, but you know how that changes daily, especially with what we've seen with 1,000-point moves. But the other statistic associated with it is that we always hear the number 7%. The S&P 500 has done 7% year over year since it started its recording that data. Doesn't mean it does 7% every year, but it averages that. Over that same time horizon, the average investor earns 3%.
So why is that so different?
Because they're emotionally charged and emotionally tied to the markets when the S&P 500 is just an index. And so when you have investors in there that have the emotional quotient and that factor, they're in and out of that market. They're missing those big days because they sell off when the market's turning down. So that's a difference of 4%. And if we just look at the rule of 72, that can greatly impact the growth of your account over time.
Absolutely. And this is where I'm starting to see that everything is starting to tie together, and this is why we need experts like you in these kinds of fields, right? The emotional bit, most people when they're thinking about numbers don't really even think about the psychological impact of what that has on you. But you look at people getting into credit card debt to keep up with the Joneses next door. It's very similar. Your psychological trauma of, oh my God, the market's crashing, keep what I have, pull out of it. But you're actually saying that some of the best gains that have existed are you said the 2 weeks right after a drop.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, a couple of weeks ago, the market was down 1,000 and turned around and was up 700 that next day. So if you're selling off when the market's creating that uncertainty, you miss that 1,000-point move on the next day. And so, and I'm sure we'll get to this later when it comes to the whole financial planning picture. But it's making sure that sound plan is in place so you have the comfort of weathering
those storms,
that volatility. Yeah.
And there we go. Okay. All right. Well, so then before we dive into all of this business stuff, because clearly you've got all this business stuff, all this knowledge in your head, I always like to get to know our guests just a little bit more detailed. So do you mind if we ask you some fun and interesting type questions?
You bet. Go ahead.
Rock on. All right. So one of the things that I really want to hear about, I love your background question. How was life when growing up? And your answer was adventurous. I love adventure. Tell me about adventure. Give me one of your adventures you had when you were young.
We were always moving. So my parents were in the military. I had some military experience, but and my dad got out of the military after before I was born. However, he still had that mentality of moving. We stayed in the longest we've stayed in a house is 3 years in one house growing up. And so, I'm always hopping around. And so mainly back and forth from Missouri to Arizona, back and forth. And so, you kind of have to adapt to those environments. And so as a kid, I was just, we were in a new construction area or new build.
Yeah.
House. And so from an adventurous standpoint, I was climbing up in other building construction, all the other, whether it's all the drywall and I'm climbing up in the attics or it was just the framework and climbing up in that capacity. So I always just really like to get out in those new environments. But I think also just from an adventurous standpoint is that I think it was more as I got older. An opportunity to get out there and travel, in my high school days, traveling a little bit more. And, you had your obligations. I was in sports as well. So that kind of took up a lot of time in addition to school. But travel's a huge necessity, I think, to fulfill your tank, and get out there. So I had the fortunate luxury of carving out that time, whether it was with family vacations or on my own.
That's awesome. And of course, you brought up one of my favorite subjects, which is travel. So, of all the places you've been, of all the places you've traveled to, where has been your favorite?
So I'd say it was just our recent trip with my wife and I. So her family's Austrian, and we went back to in December during Christmas time back to Vienna for the Christmas markets. And so we spent with her family 5 or 6 days there. You know, everyone's outside, even though it's 20 degrees, and they're all the Christmas markets, thousands of people around. That was a lot of fun. And then we shot over there to Budapest, which was a surprisingly, the expectations were low. Didn't have any expectations, but Budapest greatly surpassed. So if you haven't gotten to Budapest, that is definitely a place worth traveling to.
Worth going to, and I have not, so now I'm going to have to add that to the list. So I love it, Budapest. Okay, dig it, dig it. All right, fantastic. What is the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
You know, I've done some skydiving, but I don't find it dangerous. Like, you know, I'm a numbers guy. I look at probabilities, so I'm like,
that makes total sense.
Yeah. So,
you live for danger.
Yeah, you know, it's through a lens. I think it's through a different lens. Like people, you know, will describe and determine danger differently. I don't think there's a certain level of accountability and process it. You know, you want to make sure that like what you're doing is of sound, not so much rational.
Jumping out of planes, you know.
Yeah, everybody has a different definition of rationality, so you know, associated with your decisions you make. But I wouldn't say I haven't done anything like dangerous, but to others, they may consider it dangerous.
And there you go. And there you go. Okay. Well, so we'll just have to give everybody the same lens that you have. That sounds awesome. I like it. Okay. And then let's see. What is the most unusual habit that you have that you absolutely love, that you think that everybody should have this habit?
That's a good one. Self-development. So, you know, I create a habit. Is it something that you could see day to day? Yes, like it's not like a set brush your teeth in the morning, you know, brush your teeth at night type of habit. But self-development, like getting in the habit of like focusing on yourself first, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, and really, you know, diving in and finding your purpose. So I think that's an important role that we should all pursue. So.
Okay. So
that and brush your teeth.
Very handy for. Yes. But there we go. I love it. Good call. Good plug. I love it. Okay, so what is the most, because that brings a question to my mind, what is the most recent self-development, like was it a book, was it a class, what are you doing right now that you believe is making you even more amazing than you were yesterday?
Yes, all of the above. So I'm on the road a lot, so a lot of audiobooks. Cool. So some, you know, I'll like to throw in some fiction with some of the self-help books, you know, kind of allow the brain to process. But, you know, I do some audio books. I do courses that work on relationship building. I have a management course that I go through, have been for the last year, on how to deal on a business side of things within strategic partners and staff. You know, I have a personal development on relationship building, on how to communicate with your spouse, your family, your peers, your friends, and yeah, just really focusing on that aspect of life.
And so you sleep what? It sounds like you do a lot. That's really awesome.
I do. My wife tells me though, I'm able to shut it off. I do get my sleep. I'm a morning person, so I try to get to bed early, and as soon as my head hits that pillow, I make sure that I shut that off.
Well, that's a good thing. So good sleep is also a very handy thing for sure. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, well, thank you for letting us get to know you a little bit. So are you ready to talk about some business stuff?
Let's do it.
All right, so remember, listeners, we are here to educate, entertain, and inspire you guys. So I'm super, super excited to hear about Trey and his practice here. So as you know, if you're here with us on the Fireside Chats for the Tax Goddess Live broadcast, this is what we do, is we bring you these amazing experts. So I'm super excited to have Trey here with us today. So tell us why you do what you do and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, so how I can impact people. So it's pretty powerful to be able to help people, especially, as I mentioned about our purpose, like developing higher standards for people. And my specific trait that I bring to the environment is through finances, and how I came to be is, you were bringing up things about childhood. Well, I had multiple wallets. So it was a way to segregate my money when I was a kid, whether it was from babysitting or landscaping work, that type of thing. And so I kind of like my own little savings system. And
so physically, you had separate wallets.
Correct. And so it's just
like, awesome.
So it was naturally I was drawn to that,
Very cool.
and tracking that money. And so then as I was, grew up and started going through school and what I was looking at doing, I was gravitated towards business and accounting and got an accounting degree. But, one of the things that I liked about accounting was the financial side of things, and not the tax, not the audit.
Very few people like the tax and the audit side. I got it.
It didn't resonate with me. And so then I got into the business about 10 years ago. Graduated college, spent some time in Fort Benning, Georgia with the military. I was in the Guard for 10 years. So I spent a year at Fort Benning going through training. So I had infantry school and ranger school, and a few other courses that I had out there. Coming back to the civilian world in April of 2008, and there was nothing available out there in the workplace. If you can remember 2008, like
market crashes, real estate, yeah.
This was before the market was crashing, but you could see the tightening. Companies were shutting down and not or not reaching out and expanding, but restricting their operations. And so there really wasn't much out there. The only thing that was available was, a couple of financial positions because they pay you strictly on commission. There's no salaries, there's no benefits, there's no nothing. So
makes it easy for the big companies to say, yeah, come on in and let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I knew that was something I wanted to be. And then not 6 months later, I paired up with a senior advisor who was needing some help, and away we went. And it's an unbelievable environment because of the standpoint of, I saw, to your point, the turnover. I saw about 100 different people come and go within a couple of years that I was at that firm.
Years, yeah.
Yeah.
What's a rough industry? I mean, the tax world and the finance world are pretty closely integrated. And, typically in the tax world, we see CPAs and they become a CPA and they're a CPA for 50 years and then they retire, right? And not so much on the financial world. So to see somebody who's been in the industry and doing the same thing and working on the same, as you said, kind of with your hyper laser focus, this is always what I've wanted to do since I had separate wallets when I was a kid. That's actually pretty rare in your industry.
Yeah. Separate wallets, was a bank teller. Like I just naturally looked at it and said, everything's kind of tying together back to finances, and I love it.
Cool. Okay, well, so you've talked about all the positive bits, being able to help people. What are some of the, for our listeners out there, what are some of the negative things, some of the pitfalls that you've seen in your industry, like things that they should be watching out for as far as red flags in your industry?
Yeah, so some of the red flags, and I'll just briefly mention this before I go into the other red flags, is, from an industry perspective, is regulations. Because you have this pendulum swing that I see, something from an advisor perspective, being fraudulent or not transparent with clients. Therefore, regulations come in and swing the pendulum the other way to where it really impacts the good advisors that are out there and being able to do what they want and reach the amount of people. But from an impact to consumers and what they're looking for is just ask questions. You know, and the tough part is you may not know what to ask.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where it's vital that the person you're engaging with or looking to, whether you're interviewing an advisor, you know, be honest with them. What questions? I don't have any questions to ask. Like, you know, you can easily talk about the fees. That's an easy conversation. What are the fees? Talk about the details. And you can get into the weeds with them. But a lot of people, what I recognize is like, they don't know where to even begin and what to ask. So where I'd say is a safe bet is, if you're looking for a new advisor or don't even have one, interview a couple.
And what is the one question, like if you were going out looking for an advisor, what is the one absolute question, like I would want to know this, and this is the answer I would want to hear from that person?
You know, financial plan.
Okay, talk to me about that. What is that?
Yeah, so I'd like to see a financial plan.
Okay. If I were to come to you, like I want to see a financial plan for me. Right. That's what you mean? Okay.
The financial plan and here's why I state that is like, this is my life. So I deal with finances all the time. So I can build financial plans within my head for consumers. Some are going to be more, you know, more in depth.
Yeah.
It's going to be more tools and then some are going to be very simple, but we have the software to produce financial plans for you. And so, you know, where you can kind of get yourself in trouble is like, if you think you have a specific need, then the advisors could tend to just focus on a product to support that need and don't really look at the full picture to see how it impacts everything else. So I would say that's what sets apart the people that are, you hear the horror stories and you only hear the horror stories, right? You don't hear the good things that are being made out there, but the horror stories of people taking advantage of their assets and selling certain products with high commissions and things of that nature. Well, if it fits the plan, you know, and if it makes sense, you know, the advisor's coming to you with a solution or a product, you should get paid for that. Yeah. You know, and there's, unfortunately or fortunately, there's many different ways to get paid. And so that's where advisors need to be clear, whether it's on managing assets or it's insurance-based planning. But at the end of the day, if you feel comfortable, Shauna, with your financial plan, and within that plan is one of those products and it makes sense with everything else, then go forth with that. But okay.
And so not only just having a plan, like, sure, I've got a plan for you, but being able to explain it. Like, this is why step 1 is important for you and your family and your business, right? This is why step 2 helps your business retain good people, you know, whatever it is. So also be able to explain the plan and why, the reasons why that plan is there for you.
And I would go I'd add to that, like it's going to require some work from you, the consumer. It's going to require you to literally, you and your spouse, you know, or if it's just you, like to really dive into what are your goals? What are your objectives, right? And, you know, I've asked that a lot. I'm like, oh, well, we really haven't thought about it. Or we want to retire at 65. Well, why do you want to retire at 65? That's just a number that's kind of been thrown out there for years, right? Like,
yeah.
What is it that you really want to achieve?
Some people want to work. I mean, I know client after client after client that said, as soon as I stop working, I'm going to get bored and then I'm going to die, basically. So I want to keep working forever. Well, maybe not at full speed, but, you know, so it's dependent on the person.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we focus on here, and that's what financial planning is all about, is allowing you to achieve a work option lifestyle. And that's what we're trying to get to. Whether that's 62, 55, 75, you know, whatever the case may be. everything's different. And one area, a trap maybe also is leaning on your friends or neighbors for financial advice.
Yep.
Will get you in trouble because for a number of different reasons. Every situation is completely different. Everyone's goals are completely different. And they're only going to disclose to you the good things that are happening, not the bad things. Talking about statistics earlier, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but there's a behavior, the name escapes me from the behavior, but they're only going to disclose their positive returns, in the stock market. Well, I did 25% in this position, or I did 25% last year.
They're not going to tell you the 30% they lost the year before that or whatever.
Correct. So
got it.
Don't use your neighbors as benchmarks or friends as benchmarks. Use them as, a guidepost but really, they can get you in trouble. They can help, but they can easily get you in trouble.
I love it. I love it. And to draw a little tiny mini parallel to the tax world, we hear this all the time, right? Well, my neighbor set up an entity to flow his money through, so I'm going to do that. Yeah. No, you can't do that. That's not allowed or whatever. Like always, always, always seek out a professional like Trey to be able to get the answers for you for your particular situation. So
100%.
Dig it. Dig it. Okay, so this actually leads into, I think, my next question for you, which is, in your arena, what do you feel like business owners and entrepreneurs knew more about? Like, what is it that they're missing from their financial world knowledge besides having a professional advisor on their team?
You're going to have to rephrase that question.
You got it. I kept talking. My fault. So for business owners and entrepreneurs, right? For our listeners out there, business owners, entrepreneurs, what do you feel like they are missing from their financial world knowledge that is like you really, really want them to know this thing?
Integration and synchronization of efforts.
Okay.
So is really, I'd say, is business owners are more focused on the growth of their business, in their business, on their business, everything about their business, and which leaves them very little time to either look at the investment side of things or the benefits that can come with a business.
Cool.
Besides the widgets that that they're selling or whatever the case may be. Then also the from the personal level, and like having a team of professionals that is talking to one another, that's synchronizing their efforts, that's integrating one cohesive plan to allow that business owner to have the confidence that his team is behind them and that they're focused on their business.
And there you go. This team to look after you while you're focusing on your widget and your clients and everything else.
Correct.
Cool. Very cool. So is that, you were in some of our notes back and forth as we were preparing for today's show, I mentioned, or I saw the Vital 360 method. Is that a part of that, or tell me more about that? Yeah.
So the Vital 360 process is, you had alluded to it a little bit earlier about kind of like the financial plan, is that, what makes things, in our industry different is that process. What does that look like? If I'm just selling you one product, there is no process to looking at your overall picture or selling you on returns or trying to maximize returns. It's taking you through a Vital 360 process. Looking at everything. And we have those strategic partners. So leaning on you, Shauna, for tax advice, leaning on estate attorneys for wealth preservation and the legal component of it. You have property and casualty insurance. As a financial advisor or a certified financial planner, we have the obligation as a fiduciary to review all of that.
And there you go. So.
And we need to make sure that it all ties together. And so through the Vital 360 process that we have, we look at everything. It's not just the assets. It's not just, risk management or insurance-based planning to protect, the assets of your loved ones. It's those other components. So whether you're a professional or a business owner, you need that team or someone that's at least looking at it, addressing those.
And so oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, you.
I was going to say, so how do you, do you have like a checklist? Like, how have you built this system?
Yeah, so checklist, software, there's an internal process that we go to, but as I had mentioned earlier, it's going to take a lot of effort from the client too. That this is, the more accurate, the more detailed you are, the more accurate, more detailed the plan will be. And so that's kind of you up for the task. You're busy, you got kids running around, you have hobbies, you have work, but you have to dedicate some time to at least get that moving, and so that process has a checklist internally for us, but it also has a checklist for the clients. And it's a methodical process that we look at, and it's not, hey, let's just do something right now and then look at it down the road. No, this is all things that we're going to continue to look at, evaluate, analyze, and then provide recommendations.
So I'm listening to all of your answers, and in my mind, I'm really hearing this is starting to form the perfect relationship, right? Because you need, not only, you were talking about, there's a system, right? I'm huge on systems, love having systems and checklists that make sure nothing's getting missed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having a system, having somebody who's got your back, right? And in your case, it sounds like there's a whole team that you're actually pulling in from a team to help the client get their back, along with, you can actually answer questions, some specific, and it's not just, as you said, one thing that we're doing and then, okay, bye, thanks, you're actually there for the long run, for the long haul. So, okay. So how much time, you talked about, the entrepreneurs, the business owners, the family is going to have to put in some time, and I'm sure maybe it just depends on the situation, but are we talking like 1 hour, 10 hours, 100 hours? What are we talking about?
Yeah, good question. It depends on the complexity of the estate, or that we're dealing with. But on top of that is, we've seen your request documentation and someone has it all filed, in PDF format, and they send it right over and away you go. So
organization pays off, is what you're telling me.
In that capacity, I think, but with someone that's still organized, that'll help on that end. But when it comes to dedicating the time to figure out what it is, what are your goals? Like what do you want to do? Do you want a second home? Do you want to retire? Do you want to pass on a legacy? Do you want your last check to bounce? Like what is it that you want?
I love it. Well, as long as somebody's there to pay the $35 bounce fee, woohoo! I love it. All right.
Yeah. So to answer that question, it could, I would say you're looking at least 3 to 5 hours of dedicated time to those areas. And it's not, you could sit all on a Saturday and knock it out, or you can piecemeal that engagement to allocate out that time, just depending on your situation.
Love it. And whether or not you have been a smart business owner and hired a secretary or an administrative assistant, and they can help you with it, which is good stuff.
Absolutely.
Love delegation. So, all right, fantastic. So let's see, what is the biggest mistake that you see entrepreneurs and business owners make?
Communication or lack thereof.
Okay, talk to me about that.
So communication with their partners, with their clients, with their staff. Things can be easily overlooked. And if you're so client focused and you neglect your staff or business partners or things of that nature, eventually you're not going to have the support to maintain that client relationship, and vice versa. So back to, as I was saying about like the synchronization and collaboration, is making sure there's open lines of communication amongst the group, amongst the firm, amongst the staff, and it's using the word vital. It's vital that communication flows.
Got it.
And if it doesn't, address it right then and there.
Okay, I dig it. Just knock it out. I love it. All right, rock on. So what are the top 3 skills that you believe someone needs to be a successful entrepreneur?
I know I gave you those 3.
That's okay. You can give me 3 more.
Yeah, I mean, discipline comes to mind. Like discipline is, in any capacity will require discipline, because guess what? You're your own boss. And, sometimes that can get you in trouble, but it's also a great thing.
Okay.
So discipline's one of them. You have to have vision. You have to.
Well, kind of like you're talking about with the plan, you have to know where you're going. The vision.
Yeah, I mean, with a vision in mind. Otherwise, you could be just throwing a bunch of things on the wall. But really, like, dive in, see that vision, and so that vision's really there to keep you hungry, to keep you going. And the discipline is what will keep you in your left and right limits, so you can continue to seek that vision. And then, I think there, for me personally, is compassion. Yeah, so I just, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're going to be working with all sorts of different people, and so having compassion with the people and the relationships that you're around, and understanding, I think, will just lead to a more fruitful experience in your entrepreneurial endeavors.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, so last little bits here. Is there anything else you want to say before we get to the wrap up bit? I don't want to take up so much of your time that you're not servicing your fantastic clients.
Well, first off, I want to thank you for this opportunity.
We are so happy to have you with us, Trey.
I like to talk finances, but more importantly, I'd like to get out, what we're doing and how we help. And I'm all about knowledge, and if with nowadays, you had mentioned earlier about clients and what they should do is, now you allow Google to be your friend.
Although we're going to have a little comment about Google, because Google can get you into trouble too, right? I mean,
don't diagnose yourself,
no WebMD. I love it.
But it can reaffirm some of the things that are even being discussed. Go back to Google after you talk to somebody, or talk to a couple different people and review that. But yeah, you definitely have to be careful with that. But you have access to that information. We don't want to see paralysis through analysis.
And there you go.
But yeah, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And really what it comes down to is don't be intimidated. Don't be scared. Whether you're somebody that loves to dive into the Excel spreadsheets and have budgets, out the wazoo, or has cash just kind of fallen out of their wallet or purse because they have no organized skill set. That's okay.
So I was going to say, now I have a question for you. So are we getting Trey Vineyard, SharpPoint branded wallets to hand to the clients? Here you go. Here's your budget system.
I think that would make sense to some.
And there you go. Whatever it takes, Trey, whatever it takes.
Right. Yeah. So no, I would just ask, the sooner the better. Time is on your side when it comes to financial planning. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. And if you don't have questions, well, then you can ask me.
Yay! All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Trey. This has just been such a pleasure, as usual, getting a chance to chat with you. So here at Fireside Chats with Tax Goddess Live, we love hearing about businesses and passion and stories and all these things. So, of course, we wanted to make sure that we got out the word for our fantastic referral partner, Trey Vineyard. So, Trey, where can our listeners find you? A website, telephone? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, sharppoint.com. That's SharpPoint, SharpPoint. And the reason we have E in Sharp is, quick little plug, is Sharp ratio. It's a geeky term we use when we're analyzing portfolios, but it's a risk-adjusted return. We're all about maximizing your return, but with how much risk we're willing to take. And so that's why we have the name SharpPoint. So you can go to www.sharppoint.com or contact us at 480-999-3033.
Awesome possum. All right. Well, thank you, Trey. Fireside listeners, if you enjoyed today's chat as much as I did, please show Trey and SharpPoint your appreciation. Go to their website, give them a call, ask any questions. Trey is awesome at answering questions. So thank you so much for being here, and it's been amazing chatting with you. So Fireside listeners, we're going to be back again next month, so don't fret. Until then, you can always find us on podcast sites like iTunes, iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play. And while you're there, we'd love if you take a minute to review the show, give us some more information, share it with your friends. We always love listeners and subscribers, that kind of thing. So let us know what you think about the show. We want to make sure that we are getting you the topics that you want to hear about next. So you can find me, Shauna, your redheaded tax goddess, on Twitter at Tax Goddess, or of course, YouTube channel. And our website's taxgoddess.com and bigtaxdrop.com. And if you have any questions for our producers, any topics you want us to cover, make sure you reach out to us at taxgoddesslive@taxgoddess.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Shauna.